I should have known it was coming the second Todd started calling himself co-lead in front of the interns. It happened so smoothly, like he'd practiced it in the mirror with his Bluetooth earpiece still in. Yeah, I'll cover that in the summit, he told the logistics team while stealing one of my printed briefing packets. Linda and I are tag teaming this one. Tag teaming. Like we were some kind of corporate wrestling duo, instead of me doing the heavy lifting while he strutted around with a half-buttoned shirt and the strategic insight of a stale bagel. The thing about Todd is that he's not dumb, he's just dangerously average and deeply aware of it. That makes him hungry for shortcuts. And shortcutting me was apparently this month's ambition. The summit in Hawaii was the final phase of an 18-month client retention push, kind of engagement that keeps our lights on and gets CFOs to shut up about headcount. And because of the complexity, cross-department planning, international compliance crap, and about 16 systems that never want to talk to each other, they'd put me in charge. Officially, on paper. In the client documents, I had the emails, the version history, the Slack receipts, all of it. But that didn't stop Todd from inching in like mold behind drywall. At the pre-flight briefing, I laid out the final itinerary, printed and tabbed in a binder the size of a Thanksgiving turkey. I'd just finished walking through the daily agenda when Todd cleared his throat, leaned in, and said, "We'll probably trim the client round table on day 2. I'll handle the keynote slot there, free up some time." It got quiet. Real quiet. My jaw twitched. I glanced around the room, no eye contact. Cheryl from HR was pretending to read her water bottle label. The interns typed harder. I could practically hear the PR rep's sphincter tighten. I smiled. Thin. The keynote's already confirmed with the client. They specifically requested I walk them through the proposed resource pipeline. Todd didn't blink. Yeah, but we don't want to overwhelm them with too much detail. I'll keep it high level. Right. Translation, he didn't understand the deck and didn't want to be caught stammering over acronyms. Still, I kept my voice even. Then I suggest you leave the walkthrough to the person who built the pipeline. More silence. Someone coughed. Someone else scribbled nothing on a notepad. That's when I knew I was in trouble, because nobody said a word. After the meeting, I pulled Cheryl aside. Is there confusion about project leadership? I'm getting the vibe Todd's being positioned differently than what was agreed. She gave me that HR smile, the one with no teeth and less spine. Leadership for these offsites is fluid, don't worry, just roll with it. Fluid, there it was again. Like they'd printed a memo titled How to Gaslight Women Who Do Their Jobs Too Well and passed it around in secret. I walked straight back to my desk and checked the travel system. My seat, aisle 12C. Outbound to Honolulu was gone, just blank like I'd never booked. Like I didn't exist in the universe where this project was happening. I checked again. Same result, I called the travel coordinator. Hey, just checking, my reservation for the summit trip vanished from the app, she sounded flustered. Oh, yeah, I saw that. Might be a glitch. Sometimes the app loses data when itineraries are updated last minute. Was there a last-minute update? I asked flatly. A pause. Ooh, I don't have visibility into who authorized it, but I can loop in someone from procurement? No need, I said. I'll sort it internally. I sat there a long minute staring at my screen, watching the cursor blink like a ticking bomb. My calendar still said final client prep 9:30 a.m., but that meeting had been quietly canceled. Todd had replaced it with something called Leadership Sync. No invite for me. I wasn't surprised, just bone-deep tired. This wasn't the first time I'd been pushed to the edge of the frame right before a big reveal. But this time I had leverage, real, legal, contractual leverage. My name was on the master service agreement. I was designated key personnel. I wasn't optional. I wasn't fluid. And if Todd wanted to pretend otherwise, he was going to find out just how non-fluid the consequences could get. The final nail didn't come from legal. It didn't come from HR. It came from a gate agent holding a stack of boarding passes like she was dealing blackjack for corporate Judas. Team from Braverton? She called out, looking up from her kiosk. One by one, they stepped forward, Greg from finance with his too-tight polo, Maya from compliance clutching her anxiety meds, even freaking Jared, the intern who once spelled logistics with a K. Each got their golden ticket. Each smiled, nodded, shuffled on. Then silence. The pile thinned. The agent looked up again. Anyone else? I stepped forward, confused but not panicked yet. Hi, I'm Linda Hart, should be aisle 12C, traveling with the Braverton team. She tapped a few keys, then frowned. I don't see you on this manifest. I blinked. What? I confirmed twice. I planned the damn trip. She glanced sideways like I was about to become her problem of the hour. You'll need to check with your company coordinator. I've only got 12 names. You're not one of them? That's when Todd stepped forward. Not fast, casually like he'd been waiting for his entrance cue. Linda, he said, real smooth, there's been a change in travel plans. You're not needed at the summit. I stared at him. Excuse me, he smirked, looking past me like I was background noise. Enjoy your week off. We've got it covered. For a moment, I didn't speak. Couldn't, not from shock, but from calculation. My hands clenched around my laptop bag. I saw Greg glance at me, then quickly away like eye contact would summon guilt. Maya busied herself checking her phone. Jared adjusted his lanyard 5 times like he thought it might turn him invisible. No one said a damn word. I felt something burn in my chest, but I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't throw a stapler at Todd's smug, over-moisturized face. Instead, I stepped to the side, pulled out my phone, and opened my email drafts. Subject: MSA Clause 4.2 immediate clarification needed. To Dana Martinez, General Counsel, Syndra Corp. Body. We've arrived for the Hawaii Summit, but I've been informed I'm no longer part of the project. As the named project lead under Section 4.2 of the MSA, I'd appreciate confirmation on whether the current project timeline is still valid, given this change. Happy to forward supporting documentation. Please advise. I hit send, and that was the moment the whole world shifted. It was like flipping a switch and hearing a jet engine start to hum. Quiet now, but not for long. I stood there at the gate as Todd strutted down the jet bridge like Caesar heading to war. One last glance back, just to make sure I'd seen him win. His grin said everything. I hope he enjoyed the in-flight movie. I hope he ordered the complimentary pretzels with the arrogance of a man who thought the story was over. Because 30,000 feet below him, the story had just begun. The plane lifted off the tarmac like nothing was wrong. Todd, sitting somewhere in business class, probably already had his seat reclined and a mimosa halfway drained. I imagined him grinning, earbuds in, basking in the smug afterglow of what he thought was a clean win. The summit was underway. He'd erased the one person who could keep him accountable, and he'd done it with zero resistance. At least that's what he believed. I stayed planted in the terminal, heart pounding so hard it echoed in my ears, not from fear but from restraint. Rage restrained is the most dangerous kind. It sharpens the mind, clears the fog, makes everything crystal. 15 minutes passed, then 20. I didn't move, just stared out the window, phone in hand, watching the clouds roll in like war drums. The other passengers around me chatted about luau's and snorkeling packages. Someone's toddler screamed about Fruit Loops, but I sat completely still, every breath calibrated, the email I'd sent now pulsing like a ticking time bomb in the inbox of Syndra Corp's legal department. Then, buzz, one vibration. I glanced down. From Dana Martinez, General Counsel Syndra Corp. Subject. MSA Clause 4.2 immediate clarification needed. Hi Linda, thank you for flagging. We are reviewing MSA obligations with our legal team now. Please stand by. I exhaled once. It wasn't an answer, but it was movement. In my world, that meant something just cracked open. I stood up slowly, walked toward the nearest restroom, and locked myself into a stall, not to cry, not to collapse, but to pull up my backup flight reservation. Yeah, that's right. I had a plan B, because deep down I knew something like this might happen. This summit wasn't optional. It was literally written into the MSA with ink so permanent it could survive a nuclear winter. Section 4.2 didn't just recommend my presence, it required it. Any changes to named leadership roles had to be approved in writing by the client's CEO or their designee. No approval. No summit, no contract, no renewal. Todd, with all the foresight of a drunk raccoon, had just walked into breach territory. And I had receipts, so many receipts. I tapped through my Delta app, found my reservation, and hit confirm. Seat 18A, no upgrades, no company perks. This one was mine, booked with my own money at 2:14 a.m. 3 days ago when the glitch deleted me from the travel portal. Back then, I thought it was paranoia. Turns out it was foresight. I wasn't flying in on the company dime. I wasn't arriving with the corporate entourage. I'd be a ghost slipping in the back door, uninvited but unavoidable. As I boarded the flight, back row, middle seat, behind a toddler with a Peppa Pig tablet blaring, I felt the knot in my stomach loosen. Not from peace, but from resolve. I didn't care about legroom or free wine. I cared about truth, about consequences, about the fact that somewhere, right now, a legal team was reading a clause and realizing, oh no, they really screwed this up. 3 hours into the flight, I got another buzz. New email, same thread. Linda, update, we've briefed Mr. Kwan. He is requesting documentation of the personnel change and approval history. Please advise when you are on site. Mr. Kwan, the client's CEO, the man who had personally signed off on my leadership assignment 6 months ago. So, Todd had officially dragged his boot across a legal landmine, and now the fallout was heading straight for his tray table. I closed my eyes and let the turbulence rock me gently. This wasn't a detour. This was the beginning of the reckoning. Hawaii smelled like ocean salt and corporate dysfunction. I landed just after 5 a.m., the air still cool, the sky that soft pre-dawn gray that makes everything feel like it's holding its breath. The others were already there, checked in, badged, caffeinated. The summit was well underway by the time I rolled my carry-on over cracked concrete and into a modest hotel a few blocks from the five-star monstrosity, where Todd was probably already butchering the welcome address. My room was quiet, nondescript. No ocean view, no minibar, no company perks. Just a lamp, a hard bed, and a chair with one leg shorter than the others. I didn't care. I wasn't here for comfort. I was here for evidence. By 7:20, I was dressed in something just professional enough to look intentional if I happened to run into someone, but generic enough to be overlooked. Hair pulled back. Flats. Blazer I kept rolled in my carry-on for emergencies, and this definitely qualified. I grabbed a coffee from a lobby cart that tasted like regret and betrayal and made my way toward the resort. I didn't walk through the front doors. That would have been too theatrical. I slid in through a side entrance like a ghost in ballet flats, found an alcove outside the main ballroom, and posted up behind a decorative fern. Subtle, uninvited, precisely where I needed to be. Inside, Todd was mid-presentation. I couldn't see him, but I could hear him, and what I heard was pure disaster. And so if we look at the projected headcount ramp, he said, tapping what I could only assume was a slide. I see alignment with Q1 2023 forecasts, plus or minus margin of error. Pause. Someone murmured something. Todd replied, yes, well, the model flexes depending on client-side scope shifts, which of course are flexible. He was improvising, badly. Then he said something that nearly made me spill my coffee. As you'll recall from the February roadmap draft, which we're still using as a baseline, the February roadmap, that thing had been superseded twice. The April version had been finalized and sent to legal. The August revision had been signed off after 2 days of alignment calls. The February draft still had assumptions about budgets that were no longer accurate. He was using outdated data. On a multi-million-dollar planning summit, in front of the entire client leadership team, I couldn't help myself. I pulled out my phone, and right on cue it buzzed. Email. From Riley Tran, client analyst ICE subject. Quick question roadmap deck body. Hi Linda, sorry to bug you, but we're looking at the roadmap Todd just shared and it doesn't match what we reviewed in August. Is this even the correct version? We're confused. I nearly laughed. Riley, bless him. Barely 2 years out of undergrad, but sharp as hell and polite to a fault. He'd worked with me on the compliance timeline in Q2, and apparently, he hadn't forgotten who did the actual work. I replied, hi Riley, you're not wrong. That version is outdated. The correct roadmap includes the scope alignment memo sent on August 14th. Let me know if you'd like the accurate deck. I have it with full revision history. 5 minutes later, yes please, I sent it. And then I sat there, sipping coffee that had long gone cold, watching the storm clouds gather across the hallway. Todd was up there bluffing his way through metrics he didn't understand, using decks he hadn't vetted, while half the client team probably had my updated file open on their phones under the table. He thought he'd stolen the spotlight. But all he'd done was turn it around, right onto himself. The house of cards was starting to tilt, and I had front row seats. By mid-morning, the resort air had thickened with sunscreen, coffee breath, and the low-grade panic sweat of men who realize, too late, that they are out of their depth. I wasn't in the ballroom, but I didn't need to be. Word was already leaking like a cracked pool filter. Todd had tried to open a breakout session on risk mitigation and strategic integration, and ended up backpedaling through a minefield of missing figures, skipped slides, and one very icy stare from the client's CFO. The roadmap misalignment had already begun to ripple through the client org like a quiet alarm, and alarms always reach the top. At 10:48 a.m., I got the call. Caller ID, Cindera Corp Legal Dana Martinez. I stepped out of the alcove where I'd been quietly emailing backup documents to myself, ducked into a breezeway behind the conference rooms, and answered. Linda speaking. Dana didn't waste time. Hi, the CEO wants you on site by 11:30. We need the August roadmap, the original deck approvals, and the signed MSA with Section 4.2 highlighted. I didn't flinch. I have all of it, hard copy and digital. We'll meet you in conference room C, West Wing. Enter through the business center to avoid the main floor. Don't check in with registration. Just walk in like you belong because you do. Click. No drawn-out goodbye, no hedging. Just legal precision, which in this moment felt better than applause. I checked my watch, 40 minutes. Plenty of time to prepare for an execution. Meanwhile, inside the building, Todd had no idea the trap was already closing. I later learned how it went down from Riley and two other client analysts who couldn't wait to DM me the play-by-play. It was during a private session with the client's executive tier, CEO, CFO, their strategic ops lead, and, unfortunately for Todd, him. Todd walked in like he owned the damn island, gave a nod to the CEO like they were co-pilots, pulled up his tablet and started bluffing his way through a revised resourcing timeline he'd yanked from a Google Doc 3 hours old. Then Mr. Kwan, the CEO, leaned forward. Where's Linda Hart? Todd blinked. Excuse me, Linda. She's listed in our MSA as the named project lead. She built the previous roadmap and handled every phase since January. We expected her here. And this is where Todd made his fatal error. He smiled. That fake politician smile he always used when he thought charm could plug a crater. There's been some internal restructuring, he said smoothly. We've adjusted roles on our end to streamline leadership. I'm handling direct client engagement now. Silence, not awkward silence, loaded silence. Then Kwan stood. Didn't respond, didn't nod, just walked out. Like he didn't even need to hear the rest of the lie to know it was a lie. Todd sat there, blinking, alone with his own sweat and an off-brand stylus. By 11:15, I was already outside the West Wing, badge clipped to my belt, manila folder under my arm, and my phone vibrating with supportive one-liners from 3 separate client-side analysts who'd caught wind of what was coming. I walked in through the business center, past a stunned concierge who clearly wasn't used to seeing women march in with murder eyes and a full audit trail. At 11:29, I pushed open the door to conference room C. The lights were bright, the room was quiet, and the reckoning was right on schedule. The moment I stepped into that conference room, the temperature dropped 10 degrees. Not literally, it was Hawaii after all, but figuratively. I might as well have walked into a meat locker made of awkward silence and overcompensated authority. Around the table sat the core of Cindercorp's leadership team, CEO Marcus Quan at the head, his ever-composed GC Dana to his left, the CFO flanked by two senior strategists. And then, on the far end, looking like a kid who just got caught forging a permission slip, was Todd. He didn't speak, didn't even blink at first, just sat there with his mouth slightly open, one hand still resting on his tablet like it might suddenly save him. His tie was crooked. His confidence had cracked just enough to show something fragile underneath. The man had flown first class into a boardroom execution, and now he looked like he couldn't remember his own job title. I didn't acknowledge him. I walked directly to the client's side of the table, opened my folder, and placed a document squarely in front of Dana. Label: Exhibit A MSA Section 4.2 Key Personnel Removal Clause. Dana didn't even wait for me to explain. She flipped it open, scanned the highlighted section, and started reading aloud. Any removal or exclusion of named project leadership must be approved in writing by the client's CEO or designated representative. Failure to obtain prior approval constitutes a material breach of contract and may result in immediate suspension of deliverables, pending review. She closed the folder gently. The only sound in the room was Todd's throat trying to remember how to swallow. Quan turned toward me, calm but sharp, like someone who's already decided whether to throw you a lifeline or drop an anchor on your chest. Linda, he said, is there anything else we should know? I nodded once, reached into my folder again, and pulled out a second document, this one a printout of a Slack export, followed by a chain of internal emails from the week before the summit. Label: Exhibit B Unauthorized Org Chart Revisions Internal Drafts. I slid it forward. Dana took it. Quan angled his chair for a better view. The first email was from Todd to the HR lead and one of the travel coordinators. Go ahead and update the deck and itineraries. Repositioning summit leadership for optics. Linda doesn't need to be visible on this one. I'll take point. Timestamp 5 days before departure. The second email, from a junior ops analyst responding clearly confused, just confirming Linda's still listed as the named lead in the MSA. Should we check with legal? Todd's reply, curt, no need. I've got it. Dana read each page with the stillness of a rattlesnake right before it strikes. And she got to the last message, she let out a slow exhale, then passed the pages across the table to Marcus Quan. He skimmed, then looked at Todd. I believe he said quietly, you have just made our job extremely easy. Todd finally spoke, voice cracking slightly. This is all just a misunderstanding. We were streamlining. These weren't final. I mean, we were moving fast, no, Dana interrupted. You moved unilaterally. You removed key personnel explicitly named in the MSA. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a breach. Todd's mouth opened, but nothing useful came out. Quan turned to me, expression unreadable. Linda, are you willing to resume leadership of this summit if requested? I met his gaze, absolutely. I have the full August roadmap, the approved scope alignment, and the revised budget deck. Everything's ready. He nodded once, then turned to my own company's CFO, who, by the way, had been sitting silently through this whole thing with the same look people get when they realize they parked in a tow zone. I'm formally requesting a pause to the summit, Quan said, effective immediately. We'll reconvene once we confirm all MSA leadership requirements are restored. And with that, he stood. Dana followed. The rest of the client team began gathering their things, quiet but focused. No dramatics, no shouting, just cold corporate precision, the kind that turns into lawsuits when ignored. Todd remained seated, pale and blinking. I didn't look at him as I packed my folder. Vindication didn't need an audience, it just needed facts, and I had all of them. The official word came down 20 minutes later. The summit was suspended indefinitely, not rescheduled, not adjusted for leadership transitions. Just suspended, like someone yanked the plug on a corporate pool party mid-cannonball. I watched through the tinted glass of the West Wing lobby as Cindercorp's team quietly exited the main ballroom. Laptops shut, folders zipped, expressions unreadable. The kind of silence that says, someone's getting sued by morning. A short while later, Todd stumbled out too. No entourage, no clipboard. Just his phone clutched like a rosary and the unmistakable stench of a man who just got drop-kicked by his own ego. Word was, he'd been asked to return to the mainland immediately. Company jet? Denied. Commercial flight, middle seat, one way. I didn't watch him leave. I had better things to do, like meet with our CFO, who looked like he'd aged 10 years in the last hour. The emergency board meeting was already being coordinated. Phones buzzed, Slack threads ignited like wildfire. Legal was scrambling to contain what Dana, the client GC, had calmly but firmly described as a material breach in direct violation of agreed-upon governance structures. In other words, we'd screwed the pooch. And not just any pooch, this was our golden retriever of a client. The one that funded 3 departments, half a dozen vendor contracts, and the VP's recent Tesla lease. Losing them wouldn't just hurt, it would implode. I was sitting in the makeshift war room when our CFO finally addressed me directly. Linda, he said, voice low and cautious, like I might bite. I want to sincerely apologize for what happened. You should have never been excluded. I nodded once. Appreciated. He cleared his throat. Given everything, I assume you'll want to file a formal complaint. HR is compiling options. I sipped my coffee. Right now I just need clarity on travel expense procedures. He blinked. Sorry? I pulled out my phone, scrolled to my Delta confirmation, and held it up. I booked my own flight, Hotel 2. Breakfast was a protein bar from my purse. Do I submit those through standard reimbursement, or do we have a new protocol for when VPs sabotage logistics? Silence. He opened his mouth, then closed it, wrote something on a notepad that looked like "Make Linda whole" in all caps. Just then, another ping hit my inbox. This time from Dana. Subject, continuing collaboration body. Hi, Linda. You've begun internal review of next phase scopes. Would you be open to discussing continued engagement as a direct contractor for Syndra Corp? We value your leadership and would prefer to work with you directly going forward. Let me know a good time. I stared at the message for a beat too long, not because I was surprised, but because for the first time in weeks, something finally made sense. Todd had seen this coming, not the breach, not the fallout, me. He knew Syndra Corp trusted me, knew they leaned on me for clarity when their own workflows tangled, knew that if it came down to merit, I would outlast him 10 times out of 10. So he tried to erase me, not correct me, not improve me, erase. And in doing so, he triggered the exact clause I'd fought to get into the contract 2 years ago, the one about named leadership. The one no one ever reads, until today, back at the lobby. I spotted one of the client's junior analysts, Riley, grabbing a coffee to go. He caught my eye and gave me a nod, not dramatic, just respect. That meant more than any Employee of the Month plaque in our break room ever could. I texted Dana back. Let's talk. I'm free after 3. Todd's name was already being scrubbed from internal directories. Slack channels were reassigning permissions. The internal wiki had replaced his bio with a 404 error. No statement, no goodbye email, no farewell bagels in the break room, just gone, as it should be. 2 weeks later, the ocean looked different. Not because it was bluer, though it was, but because this time I was sitting at the right table. The summit had been rescheduled, restructured, and rewritten from the ground up. Gone were the buzzwords and rented charisma. Gone was the jazz hands energy of someone trying to bluff their way through a $3 million roadmap. This time, the opening slide didn't read Braverton Corp Project Update. It read, Syndra Corp Strategic Planning in Partnership with Linda Hart. That was the new title, Strategic Partner, not Project Manager, not Support Lead, not Key Contributor, Strategic Partner. And when Marcus Kwan, CEO of one of the most powerful logistics companies in North America, stood at the front of that room and said, before we begin, I want to personally thank Linda Hart for protecting the integrity of our agreement, he didn't look at my company's execs. He looked at me. No handshakes were offered to Todd. Because Todd wasn't there, he never would be again. Back home, the fallout had been swift and surgical. HR released a 2-sentence memo on a Monday morning titled Leadership Realignment, and by Tuesday, Todd's name was scrubbed from every system that had once bloated under the weight of his self-importance. There was no farewell post on LinkedIn. No new beginnings, selfie from an airport lounge, just digital ash. He disappeared as quietly as he'd tried to erase me. The internal story became miscommunication. The unofficial story, though, it traveled like wildfire. Don't mess with someone who reads the MSA. At the summit, I kept things professional. No gloating, no passive-aggressive jabs, just clarity, consistency, and the kind of calm that only comes when you've already survived the storm. I led the sessions, walked through the August roadmap revisions, fielded compliance questions without breaking a sweat. Even Riley from the analyst team brought me a hand-drawn diagram of the new resource plan, like a kid presenting a science fair project. Dana nodded along from the back of the room like a proud parent. The trust, it was real now. It wasn't just about deliverables anymore, it was about integrity. And me, I'd stopped waiting for credit. I'd started building leverage, one clause at a time. That night back at the hotel, I skipped the big networking dinner and took my laptop poolside. The air was warm. My inbox was cleaner than usual. I leaned back with a coffee in one hand and the ocean humming in the background. Then my phone buzzed. New email. Subject, Extended Engagement Body, Linda. Attaching a draft of the extended contract. Let us know your preferred terms. You're the real MVPs of the office jungle. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button, or the coffee pot might just forget your next brew.